Loneliness isn't just the absence of people, it's something far more complex, far more human, and surprisingly, very normal to experience. You can be surrounded by 1,000 people and still feel utterly alone. You can have everything you thought you wanted and still feel empty inside. You can be loved by many and still feel like no one truly sees you. If you have ever felt this, you're not alone. Every single person you've ever met has experienced this feeling. In Buddhist wisdom, there are six distinct kind of loneliness, and each one, rather than being an escape, is a gift. The very thing you've been avoiding and running from your entire life will teach you the most important lessons you'll ever learn. Loneliness isn't your enemy, it's your most ruthless, unforgiving teacher. And we'll explore each not to cure your loneliness, but to better understand it and embrace the experience and its lessons. Less desire. You get the promotion, buy the house, find the relationship, then comes the crash. Not from failure, but success. And with it, a loneliness so sharp it cuts through everything you thought mattered. This is the loneliness of less desire. It's the loneliness that emerges when you stop reaching for the next thing, the next achievement, the next purchase, the next relationship, the next distraction. There's nothing left to chase, no mountains left to climb, and nowhere left to run. This emptiness feels terrifying because our entire culture tells us that wanting, striving, and acquiring is our purpose for living. It is everything we were taught to believe would make us feel whole. This loneliness strips you naked. It teaches you that happiness was never in the having, it was always in the being. You learn to be full with less, to feel complete without adding more. The constant hunger for more was actually a clever form of escape in the realization that you were never actually empty. You were just too busy filling yourself to notice you were already whole. Contentment. This is the loneliness that comes from being genuinely okay. You stop complaining, stop wrestling with reality, stop wishing your life were anything other than what it is. And that contentment feels isolating. Think about the last time you were with friends. Everyone was sharing their problems, frustrations, and drama. There's a strange intimacy in collective suffering. We bond over what's wrong, what's unfair, what's not working. The world moves at the speed of discontent. Everyone is always chasing towards something better, something more, something different. But when you find real contentment in the present moment, you're no longer running with the crowd. You're moving at a different pace, and that can feel lonely, like you're living in another world. This loneliness teaches you that misery loves company, but contentment often lives alone. You stop participating in the cultural obsession with what should be. You stop feeding the machine of dissatisfaction that keeps so many people connected through their mutual unhappiness. This kind of loneliness shows you that happiness isn't about getting what you want. It's about wanting what you have. You learn that the deepest satisfaction comes not from changing your circumstances, but from changing your relationship to your circumstances. And in a world that profits from your dissatisfaction, your peace is an act of rebellion. Stillness. You cease the constant motion, the endless activity, the perpetual planning that keeps you one step ahead of your own thoughts and feelings, and the feeling of isolation and loneliness that emerges when distractions are removed, and what remains is stillness. We live in a culture addicted to motion. We check our phones 2,600 times a day. We fill every silence with podcasts or music. We schedule ourselves into oblivion. We prioritize routines and productivity, always taking action, always moving, always becoming someone else. When was the last time you sat down on your couch alone? No phone, no book, no plans. Within minutes, You feel anxious and panic sets in, not because something's wrong or missing, but because nothing's happening. Your nervous system, trained for constant stimulation, starts screaming for input. This is the loneliness of stillness. It reveals how much of our activity is actually avoidance, that you're running from yourself. We stay busy to avoid feeling. We create unnecessary problems to solve so we don't have to face the deeper questions. We make ourselves indispensable so we never have to discover who we are when we're not needed. Every Netflix binge, every social media scroll, every manufactured crisis, all of it designed to avoid this moment, the moment when you have to be alone with yourself, with your thoughts, with the person you've been too busy to meet. And in this stillness, everything catches up. The grief you've been too busy to feel, the dreams you've been too scared to pursue, the person you've been too distracted to become. It all surfaces when you stop moving fast enough to outrun it. But when you find comfort in this stillness, you learn that stillness isn't empty, it's full. When you stop the constant doing, you start experiencing being. You discover that you exist beyond your activities, beyond your productivity, beyond your usefulness to others. The beauty in this kind of loneliness is it teaches you that you don't need to justify your existence through constant motion. Your worth isn't measured by your output. In a world filled with distractions competing for your attention, when you find serenity and peace in this loneliness, your relationship with activity changes completely. You stop doing things to avoid feeling and start doing things from a place of choice. Your actions become expressions of your presence rather than escapes from it. And paradoxically, by learning to be alone with stillness, you become more genuinely available to others. Complete discipline. You go through a breakup, and all your friends want to take you out, get you drunk, help you forget about it. But something inside you knows that's not what you need. You need to feel this fully, to stay present with the heartbreak, to let it teach you the lessons from the experience. So you say no to the well meaning distractions, and suddenly you're alone with your pain. This is the loneliness of complete discipline. It's the solitude that comes when you refuse to abandon yourself in the face of discomfort. While others flee from difficult feelings, you've learned to stay. While others numb their pain, you've chosen to feel. While others drown in distractions, you've decided to be present. It's complete discipline of staying present through discomfort, of not abandoning yourself when things get difficult. This loneliness shows up whenever you commit to something that requires you to stay present through difficulty. It's sitting with the blank page instead of scrolling social media. It's feeling the grief fully instead of immediately dating someone new. It's choosing growth even when it's excruciating. This discipline isn't about being hard on yourself, it's about being loyal to yourself. It's about not abandoning yourself when you need you most. But this loyalty feels incredibly lonely because it sets you apart from a culture that teaches us to run from discomfort, to bury the pain, to avoid struggle and hardship. And the world is full of people who crumble when things get hard. This kind of loneliness teaches the most radical act of self love, staying when everything in you wants to run. And that capacity to stay in discomfort, to face the difficulty, becomes your superpower. You stop being a victim of your circumstances. You stop waiting for rescue. You become the person who can sit with their own darkness, who doesn't fall apart when life falls apart, who finds wisdom in the difficult experiences. Letting go of fantasy. We all live double lives. There's the one we're actually living, and the one we're endlessly imagining could be living. The perfect relationship just around the corner, the career breakthrough that will change everything, the future version of ourselves who has it all figured out. You scroll through social media, photo after photo of perfect lives, perfectly sculpted bodies, glamorous adventures and vacations. For a moment, you imagine yourself there. It soothes the ache inside you just enough to distract you from how empty your own life feels. This is what it means to wander in the world of desire, to escape into fantasy, to search for something that might make reality feel less lonely. But this loneliness is not meant to be filled, it's meant to be felt. It's the loneliness of letting go of who you thought you'd become, letting go of the dream you built in your head. This is the death of your imaginary life, the funeral for who you were supposed to be, the burial of everything that could have been. This is the loneliness of reality. When you stop wandering in desire, stop scripting a better life in your mind, you're left with what is, and what is often feels smaller, less shiny, and more ordinary than what could be. It's the loneliness where you see yourself clearly, not as the person you hope to become, but as the person you are right now. It's the acceptance of your current job, your current relationship status, your current body, and all your life circumstances without the comforting thought of, but it's going to get better. Our culture is built on the promise of fantasy. Social media feeds us endless images of lives we could be living. Marketing tells us we're one purchase away from happiness. Self-help promises we can manifest our dream life. But what happens when you stop buying into the fantasy economy and start investing in reality? This kind of loneliness teaches that fantasy is a form of abandonment. Every moment you spend in an imaginary future is a moment you're not present to your actual life. The beautiful, perfectly imperfect, ordinary miracle of your real existence gets ignored while you're busy rehearsing a life that will never come. The gift of this loneliness is presence and appreciation to what is actually here. It reveals that your life is more rich and complex than any fantasy you could create. Reality, however unpredictable and messy, has something fantasy never can: the possibility of actual change, real growth, real connections, and genuine surprise. Not seeking security from thoughts. We have 60,000 to 80,000 thoughts a day, and most of them are the same thoughts we had yesterday. We create narratives about our past, predictions about our future, and justifications for our present. We live inside the story of our thoughts, narrated by the voice in our heads. But when you stop listening and believing every thought, you realize that the stories you've been telling yourself, that voice in your head, isn't truly you. And you feel this space that opens up. This is the loneliness of mental freedom. It's the loneliness of discovering you exist beyond your thoughts, beyond your story, beyond your narrated identity. It's terrifying because we've learned to comfort ourselves with our internal dialogue. And when you stop leaning on those storylines to define your identity, you lose all your familiar reference points. The story of why you're sad, the narrative about your difficult childhood, the explanation for why things didn't work out, the identity you've carefully constructed over the years, all of it fades away. What's left is silence, a kind of existential nakedness. There's no narrator, no commentary, just being. And in that silence, the loneliness is crushing and liberating. This is the gift of this loneliness. You don't expect safety in your thoughts, and instead you start living authentically. You realize you don't need to explain your past to move forward. You stop analyzing. You stop overthinking, And you find comfort in knowing that you don't need to understand everything. These 6 kinds of loneliness, the loneliness of less desire, contentment, stillness, discipline, reality, and mental freedom, they're not bugs in the human system, they're features. Each one strips away something you thought you needed for happiness. It exposes the layers of false security you've been clinging onto and reveals that you're more than you thought you were and need less than you thought you needed. As Pema Chodron says, loneliness is what's left when there's nothing to hold on to. Yet we spend our entire lives making sure there's always something to hold on to, some person, some goal, some story, some distraction. But holding on is exactly what's keeping you from discovering who you really are. So the next time loneliness visits you, in whatever form it takes, try not to run, try not to fill the space, try not to fix it. Instead, get curious. What is this loneliness trying to teach? What is it asking you to let go of? What is it offering on the other side of your fear? Because on the other side of truly facing loneliness is the connection you've been missing with yourself.